Today on Side Closing Opposition, we want to expand the scope of this debate, and we've heard a lot from both sides of the House about how ideas are good, thinking is good, knowledge is good, and we think that's all well and good. We really haven't heard why these inherently liberal values are good, and we haven't heard why this debate should be an inherently liberal value debate. And so we're going to take this larger, we're going to expand the scope of this debate, and we're going to bring it outside the confines of Western liberal democracies and explain to you why banning books can actually be good for certain regimes, even if it doesn't fit our own liberal views. Banning books does serve a purpose. The resolution is this House would never ban books at any time for any reason ever. And so we're going to take it, to China, we're going to take it to a precedent regime, and we'll explain to you why it serves the purpose of these regimes. After that, I'm going to talk to you a bit about context, about how expanding on the idea we've already heard about vulnerable people and how people need to have supporting ideas to fully understand something. And then after that, I'm going to do a little bit of refutation of what we heard from the opposition speakers. Now, so firstly, the idea that banning books can be useful. No, we don't agree with this. We're Western liberal Democrats. But the fact is, for some people, some regimes, banning books is useful. For the Chinese regime, it is not good that their citizens know more. It is not good that your average citizen of China can find out about an election going on in Taiwan and that the Chinese ethnicity is capable of democracy, which the Chinese government in Beijing claims that it isn't. Now, of course, as Western liberal Democrats, we think Chinese people should be allowed to know that there are elections in Taiwan. But if you're the Chinese regime, it completely serves your purpose, and it is very helpful that these people are ignorant of what's going on. And why is this important for that? The fact is that when people in these regimes know more, they really start to question their own government, and that's not good for the government. When they start to question their own government, they spread dissent, and this harms the government's objectives of social coherency, especially in a place like China, of economic mobility, of trying to build the economy and achieve national things, which can't happen if there is dissent. Again, we don't agree with it as a Western liberal Democrat, but the fact is, for the Chinese government, it is a useful thing. But you disagree.
In oppressive regimes like China, shouldn't these governments be questioned?
The fact is, the resolution is, this House would never ban books for any reason ever. So when looking at them from the perspective of the Chinese regime, no, they should not be questioned. So if we getting back to the modules I was working on, the idea that when we feel questioned, it harms society. It creates disparities in the nation, it creates dissent, and this dissent harms the objectives of the government. So we find that banning books helps the Chinese government achieve their objectives, and thereby, in this case, for these people, it is a valid assumption. Again, this is not a Western liberal idea, but the fact is, in this case, for these ideas, it works. There are reasons to ban books if you are a regime that wants to keep your people from having knowledge in order to achieve your national goals. Secondly, the idea of context. Now, moving back onto a smaller scale, one of the places where books are restricted are schools. Now, why is this? The purpose of the education system is to give kids, when they graduate, a complete perspective. They are able to be critical thinkers, process different ideas. So if you put Mein Kampf in elementary school without giving kids a class on Hitler's ideas, World War II, the Holocaust, etc., we find that they're not going to gain a complete perspective. And until they are able to get that complete perspective of the issue, we find that it's better to keep the information away from them. Why is this? Because if a kid reads Mein Kampf, he's going to start thinking, yeah, maybe, but I'm not saying that would necessarily happen, but the fact is that if we allow kids to have this kind of dangerous stuff, words are power, knowledge is power, without having the substantiation to back it up, they're going to take that back and potentially do harmful things with it. And the fact is, that means the education system has failed, because the mission of the education system in most countries is to give people a complete perspective of what's going on. If we allow kids to go forth without having a complete perspective, we allow them to have just one side of the argument, we believe we have failed, and that's why we keep it away from them at that age. Now, some refutation. So we heard from the second government speaker that books are the best way to portray ideas. We heard how good they are, and then we actually heard how they're not that powerful, and how it's better to be at a funeral than read an obituary. And we're going to go with the second half of that argument, that they're considering books to be not as powerful, and we actually disagree, because books continue to be the best, cheapest, and most efficient way to disseminate ideas. Yes, with the internet, but a lot of people in the world don't have access to the internet. A lot of people in the world don't have access to see something going on. It is much easier to read about something going on in a book than to go to see it. And so we believe that it's very cheap to mass produce books, especially for an organization that really wants to disseminate your ideas. And the fact is that it is the easiest way to do so. Second, we heard of freedom of knowledge, and again, we go back to the idea that Western liberal democracy, we don't think that freedom of knowledge is an inherently good thing everywhere in the world. It is good here, but it doesn't mean it's been good for everyone everyone ever, which was the resolution that we are debating. So we think they haven't really told us why Western liberal values of freedom of knowledge are good. We've heard that they're good because knowledge is good. And we, on-side opposition, disagree with this. We think that not everywhere, every time, liberal values are necessarily the best thing to have. And now, so for these reasons, for the idea that sometimes banning books in some places at some times can be useful to some people, and that proper context is needed, we beg to oppose. Thank you.